The setup moves can be a little difficult at the start, but you get used to them fairly quickly. There's often more than one setup. It comes down to personal preference. You don't need to memorize the examples I'm about to demonstrate. This is just to show you what to do so you can intuitively learn and discover what setup moves suit yourself. I'm going to start off with going through easy cases and gradually moving on to more difficult ones. This is a tutorial, so you can expect helpful tips as I go along. To start off, one of the most basic things to keep in mind is if you have a target that is already set up in one of these spots, you leave that target where it is and set the other one up. Here is an example of what I mean. UF to FD to UR. Now this is already set up. This just needs to get to here. So D prime L2, which turns the cycle into UF to LU to UR. Now we can apply the algorithm and undo. I did say you shouldn't disturb the piece which is already set up, but an exception is a case such as this one. UF to DR to UR. Again, this is already set up, so an obvious setup would be D to L2. Now the cycle is UF to UL to UR. However, you could do a one move setup by doing a wide B turn. If you do that, you just need to take into account that these pieces have now been flipped, so the cycle is UF to RU to LU. And undo. Here is quite an easy case. UF to FR to LB. Pretty straightforward. RL. Now the cycle is UF to UR to LU. As for undoing this, it doesn't matter which order I undo them in, because L and R are on opposite layers and are completely independent of each other. So I could go L prime R prime or R prime L prime. I think that's the same example. But you get the idea. Now I'm going to show you a case where the order does matter. UF to FL to DF. A good rule to go by is set the targets up in the same order as the cycle. That way you're less prone to undoing the setups in the wrong order. Following this rule, I'm going to do L prime, so now the first target is set up. Now for the second one, D, R2. Now the cycle is UF to UL to UR. We know that the targets were set up in the order of the cycle, so from this we can easily undo the setup moves. R2, D prime, L. You probably noticed I did a lot of R turns there. I will explain how to cancel those in the next part. Unfortunately, you can't always set the targets up in the order of the cycle. Here is an example of what I mean. UF to DF to DR. If you tried to set these targets up in order, it would be ugly. Let's see what happens. D prime, L2, but now what was in DR has now moved to there. D, R2. You shouldn't have to keep track of pieces like that. So the correct setup move will have to be R2, D prime, L2, which turns the cycle into UF to UL to UR. And undo. Another example of being restricted in terms of setup moves is this. UF to BU to LB. If we try to set up these in order, it'll just get confusing. Now let's move to there. Yeah. Anyway, so we are going to have to set up LB first. L, now BU, B prime, R prime, but that just got flipped. So now the cycle is UF to UR to LU. And undo. So what I'm getting to is your setup moves should be in a way that once you've set up one target, the other one isn't affected, it's still in the same spot. This makes it a whole lot easier and is much more efficient. The only time when setting up one target should change the position of the other is when you set both of them up at the same time. Like this. UF to RB to RF. I would do R wide B. Now the cycle is UF to UR to UL. And undo. I will finish off by showing my least favorite TuRBo case. UF to LD to BL. To set this up, you could do D2, R2, L, which turns the cycle into UF, RU to UL. You could do B2, R prime, L2, which turns it into UF to LU to UR. If I wanted to use TuRBo to solve this case, I would do S2, L, making the cycle UF to RU to UL. And undo. So just practice. Once you've used TuRBo enough, you will unintentionally memorize your preferred setups, and you won't have to pause to think, you'll just instantly know what moves to do. You need to know how to deal with parity, and there are ways to get more efficient with this method, so now you can move on to the final part.